Hello and welcome to this week's video. This week's video is going to be a little different. It is going to be longer. Not that my videos tend to be very short to begin with, but this video will be longer as it is kind of a special video. It is something I do quarterly in my photography classes. So this is going to be a question and answer video around some various topics. And these questions are provided by the students in my 3 photography classes at Highline College in winter quarter 2021. So it's kind of like you're in class. So here we go. I'll share the categories of of questions. There will be composition and creativity. There will be portraits. There will be business. There will be miscellaneous. There will be gear. And I'll put in the description below, I will put markers for each of those sections if you want to jump to the one that interests you the most. As is tradition somewhat in my class videos, I tell a bad dad joke. So here's today's bad dad joke, or this video's bad dad joke. And the joke is, how much did the pirate pay for his pierced ears? How much did the pirate pay to get his ears pierced? $1 an ear. A buck, $1 per ear, buccaneer, pirate. I know I shouldn't explain it, but sometimes that makes it funnier. All right, let's get on to the questions. Before we even get started with that, though, I do have to tell you something. These are my opinions, and you may have a different opinion. I think it's kind of funny if you ask 5 photographers a question about a subject, oftentimes you will get 6 to 10 different answers. So my number one answer will be likely, it depends. It depends. It depends on your specific situation, your specific needs, your budget. There's lots of things that goes into answering some of these questions. So I'll give you my best shot. I'll try and keep it brief-ish, and we'll get started. Here we go. The first category is creativity and composition. So what I'm going to do is throw the question up on screen as written by the student, and then I'll kind of parse it a little bit briefly, and then try and give an answer. So the first question is, how do I take popular subjects, or eye-level photos, of subjects? So one of the things I discuss in class is taking your photos from a more interesting perspective than just where you normally stand. I find that very interesting. I find that creating a different eye level in relation to the subject oftentimes results in interesting photos. This student is saying, I like the big picture. I like that eye level view. And that's fine. That's totally fine. Just know that if your intent is to create photos of that grab people's attention because it's something different, unique, rare, and different, an eye level probably will not accomplish that as easily as if you change that perspective by getting taller or lower to the ground. Unless it's an amazing subject, then you don't have to work as hard with composition by changing the eye level. If you're taking a picture of the Grand Canyon, you can take that at your eye level because that's interesting. If you're taking a picture of some texture or the side of a building, then eye level may not be it. You may need to tilt up and show what it looks like from right below. Lots of different things like that. Again, somewhat it depends, but the goal that I go for in class is to create photos that are interesting. And a lot of times our subjects aren't very interesting, so we work harder with composition, and that means changing your eye level or the camera's position relative to the subject, which means not normal standing height. But if you love taking photos at normal standing height, do that. They're your photos in the end, and if you love them, great. There you go. All right, question number 2. If you've got popular subjects, how do I make interesting photos of that? I give an example with the Space Needle, where I take a picture from right below it, so it kind of looks like a flying saucer, where most of the photos you see of the Space Needle are from the parking lot where you see the whole Space Needle. So again, this depends a little bit, but oops, my note wanted to run away. Sorry about that. I think there's two ways to approach popular subjects, especially if you're traveling. So when you have famous landmarks, I think you should take two photos. Two categories of photos, if you will. One, take the postcard photo, the one that everybody expects to see, the one they've seen a million times, but that shows you were there in a way that, like, oh yeah, I know what that is, and there's no mystery. There's not necessarily art, but it's maybe for your family, for your friends, for the Insta, for whatever, to show that you were there and you created an image. And then the second image is maybe the artsy one, the one that is for you, that says, here's how I experienced this. So it goes beyond just a surface level picture of the Space Needle. It looks like it's this tall in relation to all the stuff around it. And it's this color, it's this, that, and the other thing. It is more than an expression of how you feel about it, how the day felt to you, how the overall experience felt to you. So you're trying to add those layers of story. You can do that with composition. You can do that by whatever the environment around it. If the weather changes, I have some pictures with really dramatic clouds around the Space Needle that changes the feeling. I have, like I said, the picture from right down below, zoomed in really tight on the top, so you just see details. So take both. Take the postcard photo, the one that if you do a Google search for that subject, you'll see that or something similar, and then take the one for yourself. So there you go. All right, third question here about composition and creativity. Does every image need a definitive subject, and how does non-objective, so abstract, kind of differ? We all need something to look at, I think. What it is can be, one of the fun things about abstract photos, especially, are there photos that are open to interpretation by the person who's viewing it. So you make it super easy for someone to participate in the photo because they don't know what it is, and so they can bring their own story to it. And that's how people get invested and interested in your photos, is when they can bring themselves into it, when they have a sense of wonder and they want to fill in the blanks of what is this. So that's a benefit of abstract photos. And depending on how you take photos of ordinary things that are, like a pen, a spiral notebook, you can make those abstract too by choosing composition and lighting. And again, then you make people go, it's familiar, I kind of know what it is, but it's different. So I have to understand why it's different. So that's a goal, can be a goal, is the goal is to get people involved in your photos. And one way to do that is to add mystery. Abstracts are very mysterious, and every time someone looks at it, they'll have a different interpretation, maybe depending on their mood. Or you can take ordinary objects and make them look more abstract through composition and light. And then again, that still engages the viewer, which increases interest. When we're competing for people's eyeball attention with all the things on social media, the bazillion photos that are uploaded every day, if you want to grab attention, you need to find some ways to do that. So, okay, I think that maybe answered that. I've grouped a whole bunch of questions here because this is kind of all about interesting photos of normal stuff, the stuff of everyday life, maybe the stuff in this room, maybe the stuff just outside your door, the stuff on your walk around the neighborhood. How can you take interesting photos of that stuff? And again, let's unpack what the word, the recipe for interesting photos. In the recipe is, you have the subject, you have the composition, you have light, and you have post-processing. So how can you combine those things in the end to result in an interesting photo? And if the subject isn't bringing much interest because it's a pen on your desk, then maybe you will need to work harder with composition, maybe wait for more interesting light, and or lean into more heavily on post-processing to add some interest. Now, you're not going to, with post-processing, I'll always caveat this, software is not going to rescue a yucky photo, an uninteresting photo. It can add on to what's there and shape it, but it's not going to rescue it. in my opinion. So let's take a look at a couple photos here in Lightroom. So here's what I've got showing up on screen. These are photos taken with my phone of stuff around my house, in my neighborhood. The first ones are frosty morning ones here on my car. Just the frost with the sun behind it. So composition, light is playing a part here. Post-processing did as well. But the main thing is the subject here is bringing interest, because around here in Seattle, the Northwest, we don't get a ton of frosty mornings. And especially we don't get this kind of frost that kind of sticks up a little bit. And then the sun behind it. So I spent a few minutes walking around my car taking photos, waiting for the car to heat up, looking for composition. So that's another thing, is you just have to pay attention, not just, you train yourself to pay attention, to look for things that you normally walk by, or find the beauty in the things you just normally walk by. So this is just, again, ice on a car, ice on the car next to me. We created some really cool, it almost looks like tree branches, tree leaves, very organic. That's what caught my attention. You know, and normally we're so busy, we're just, you know, scraping the ice off the car, get in, brr, it's cold, and then move on. You know, slow down. See the world differently. See the world as someone who's noticing the stuff that's already there, and training yourself to notice it as, like you're looking at it through a camera, which is different. This is just right back here in my office. It's I positioned the light a little differently, this blue light, and it's just this shelf, and it makes this shadow. So it's nothing fancy. This is also photographed with my phone, but it's abstract, like we were just talking about in the last photo. What is it? Am I supposed to, you know, what am I supposed to do with this? And everybody that looks at it will maybe bring something different. So that one's all done by light. So is this. This is the blinds on our sliding door, and the way the sun's hitting it. So a couple photos here of that, just playing with composition, noticing the light, and then playing with composition. This was on walking my son's dog a couple days ago. This is such a quintessential 2020, 2021 photo. This family has their masks, their face masks, hanging in the window to dry. So I just quick did a phone snap of that. I took this one just today, of the light coming in our bedroom window, shining on this cabinet with the knob pulls on it, and the shadows and textures and things, again with my phone. So it's noticing. It's looking at things slightly differently, or maybe very differently than normal. Here's another group of photos. This is a student from this quarter, Zach here. So we'll zoom in a little bit. There's some spoons sitting on a book, making reflections. That's really cool. So there's some abstract elements here. There's really interesting composition. Our eyes are drawn to threes. So there's some really cool stuff there. Let's go to the next photo. This is just his phone with the flashlight on, and I'm not sure how he did this, but it's really cool. I think he might have done some of this in post in Lightroom, brushing to make that part brighter, to make it look like a spotlight. But really cool, really creative. Light on it's amazing the difference light will make on ordinary subjects. Just an open book, but this golden window light and this perspective makes it different. So it's paying attention to environment. It's paying attention to where you're putting the camera in relation to the subject to create interest. It's not rocket science, but it's not easy. It takes practice. It takes an interest and a desire to make something beyond just, here's a picture of a book sitting on a table. Here's a picture of spoons in my kitchen. Oh, let me put the spoons on the book and then find an interesting perspective of it. Yeah, it's thinking differently. It's thinking differently, which is so easy, but so hard. So again, the answer to this kind of it depends. The overall answer is celebrate the ordinary stuff around you. Try and look at it differently. Look at things as an artist, as a photographer. What is the object shape remind you of? How can it be reinterpreted with light and shadow and color and camera position to make it look not necessarily like spoons, but like, again, mirrors or funhouse mirrors with those curves. Yeah, but it's, oh my gosh, so hard. Okay. But anybody can do it, I think. It's not just a matter of willpower, it's a matter of intent, a matter of desire to do it, interest in doing it. Some people don't enjoy doing that, and that's okay. That's okay. You're still a good person. Okay, how do you bring meanings to your photo and demonstrate a story? How do you find your photo style? And how do I know what kind of focal length is right for me? So these are all a little bit around, I'll call it style or voice. That's kind of why I've grouped them together. So story, in my definition I use in class, is an extra layer of emotional content that can be done through exposure. So how bright and how dark. We have emotional connections to brightness through color. We have emotional connections to different colors, warm colors, cool colors, hard light, soft light. We have emotional associations with those. Light direction we have associations with. Shadow, where the shadows, especially on faces, are placed. So you have to leverage those things, pay attention to them, be aware of how they're interacting with your subject, and to know whether it's possible to create a story beyond but here's a picture of my book open on the table. When you add the light, like that photo I just showed you of Zach's, that window light, that golden looking sunset or sunrise light, that changes the story, adds some meaning beyond just a picture of a book. So atmosphere can do that, light, color, okay? Style is finding what you enjoy taking pictures of, what you repeatedly are creating. That's your style. Think about the clothes you wear, what you put on, how you do your hair, the choice of if you wear glasses, what kind of glasses, choice of jewelry or not, tattoos, all those kind of things. We make external choices, which are reflections of value, of interest, of how we want the world to view us. So it's unconscious and conscious, and it evolves. So I would say, how do you find that? And what is repetition? What are you drawn to? What kind of things do you, when you create a photo of it, the hair on the back of your neck stands up because you're so excited about it and you just can't wait to share it. That's your style. You can observe others, be inspired, and then combine that with yourself, and then you get something new. And that's a lot of fun to explore and to work through. And I look back on the photos I took 10 years ago, and I'm doing it similarly, but different. I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago. So hopefully the art I create will also change. What lens focal length is right for me? Big time, it depends. But I connected this to style because the lenses we use have looks and ways they render scenes. Wide angles will treat things differently than telephotos, and macros will do something different. So being aware of that affects how the image is rendered. So that's part of your style. I tend to like telephoto up close, the little picture, if you will, the details. So that means I tend to use more telephoto type lenses or up close type photos. So if that's what you like, that's the kind of lens you're going to do. If you like the big picture, you like the wide shot, you like shots that are more documentary, photos that are more documentary, that look kind of like what the world looks like through these things, then you will choose a different focal length. So they're all connected, they all go together. And again, how do you know what your style is? Again, it comes back to What do you consistently do as you create your photos? Where do you put the camera? Do you tend to be a certain perspective over and over again? Do you tend to do a certain time of day, a certain color palette of your subjects? Yeah. So it's a fun journey. I hope you enjoy learning about your style, discovering it, naming it, owning it, and using it as a resource as you create your next photos. Because if you go to take a picture, let's say you're in downtown Seattle and taking photos and you're trying to take pictures of buildings and you're just like, none of these look good. But you're in Pike Place Market and all of a sudden you're taking these amazing photos of the fruit stands and the flowers because that's what you like. Buildings, not so much. But the flowers and the fruits and vegetables and all that good food, that worked for you. That's what you're more interested in. That's style. All right. Limited with photography gear and equipment, what do you suggest? Still capture amazing photos. And what do you say about prime lenses being beneficial? So let's start with that first question. Limited gear is awesome. It's a great place to start because then there's less confusion or excuses of, oh, if I just had this, then it would have been a better photo. If I use this lens instead of that, I use this setting instead of that. If you keep it simple when you're starting, you can concentrate on learning the skills and learning how to manage all the bits and pieces of photography technically and creatively without having all these too many choices. Sometimes we get paralyzed by too many choices. It's like Netflix. What am I going to watch? I have 20 things I want to watch, so I'm not going to watch anything. Yeah. So having limited choices are awesome. One of the other things is, I'll get to that there's another question coming up about that. All right, prime lenses versus zoom lenses, which can help you be more creative. A zoom lens has a variable focal length, so it means it can be maybe wide angle and telephoto all in one lens. You just zoom it. And a prime lens has a single focal length. So if you want to zoom, you have to move. You have to physically walk if you want to change the size of stuff or how much is in your photo. So I can stand in one spot with a zoom lens and create multiple different images without even moving my feet by just zooming the lens. So I get different potential stories. So that can be a little lazy. I know I've caught myself being lazy by just zooming with the lens, not my feet, and not changing perspective. So it depends. Yeah, it's something to pay attention to. Prime lenses are awesome. They often are less expensive, sharper, faster. They let in more light, so it's actually a great place to start. And it's less, again, one less decision to make. If you can reduce the number of decisions you're making, that forces you to then concentrate on what's more important. Steve Jobs, Apple co-founder and maybe creative genius, was famous in later life for always, when he was on stage, he would wear a black mock turtleneck, blue jeans, and New Balance sneakers, because then he didn't have to decide what he was going to wear that day, and he would concentrate on the message he wanted to share. Genius. All right. So there's that. Let's go on to gear. Gear acquisition syndrome, gas. Gear is important. It's a big deal, but a lot of times it depends. I just really like using this sign. Can you tell? So this is why I use a computer, because it's not quite center aligned and it's bugging me. All right. So a lot of people ask what should be my first camera. Is it better to buy the best or stick with a basic and then get some good stuff later on? What lenses should you recommend? Mirrorless or DSLR? And aside from a camera, what else do I need? So lots of stuff here about gear, especially concentrating maybe on your first camera to get. Seriously, on this one, it depends. Budget's obviously a big factor. If you go buy a new camera, there's no bad ones. But having said that, really my suggestion would be, if possible, go into a camera store that specializes in cameras. If you're in the Seattle area, you have a couple of them. There's Glazer's Camera in downtown Seattle, north part of Seattle. And then there's in Bothell, there's Kenmore Camera. So it's farther north still. But talk to a person. Tell them what you like to photograph. Get your hands on the camera. Feel it. Look at the menus. Does it make sense at least a little bit? Does it feel good in your hands? One of the things about using a camera is holding it. How do you hold it? Does it fit you? Is it too heavy? Is it too light? Does your thumb poke you in the eye or something while you're using it? So be aware of those things, and they'll hopefully help narrow down so you can find one that's a good fit for your budget, for what your intended uses are, your technical skill level, your creative desires, and all that good stuff. If possible, I recommend, buying a little more than you think you need so you don't outgrow it as quickly. One of the limitations of the entry-level $500-ish cameras is there's some technical limitations that you might bump up against depending on the type of photos you want to do next year. So just be aware of that. Buy the best camera or stick with a decent one because tech is always changing. Yeah, Sony just, especially if you buy a Sony, there's going to be a new one in 6 months, so just hold on. I don't have the latest Fuji camera, for example. I bought each previous iteration, but I have the X-T3, not the 4, which is current. It's been out almost a year. I'll probably wait till the 5 at this point. It's a big factor in determining how long to hold on to your camera. Remember, the camera that you're probably looking at, especially if you're looking at used, was maybe the best at the time it came out, and everybody loved it and said, why would you buy that old thing? So yeah, that's an important consideration. I would consider and suggest investing more money potentially into lenses. That's going to be a part of your photography investment that'll last value-wise and change less over time technology-wise. What kind of gear do you need besides a camera? Couple things. Get a tripod of some kind, a little one, or a medium-sized one. Oops, this one didn't get buttoned up quite right. Or a big one. Tripods are cool. They like to give you lots of creative options and focus. There we go. Creative options and flexibility of photos you can take and create. Most importantly, though, here's what you need. Hang on a second. I'm going to go get it. All right, I'm back. Here's the other thing you need after you get a camera. One of these. An extra hard drive, or actually you should have 2. Okay? Copy your data. Copy your photos. Copy your precious creations. It's not a matter of when these are going to break. Oh, excuse me. It's not a matter of if these are going to break. It's a matter of when. A couple years ago, I had an external hard drive with all my photos on it fail. I had a backup, so I thought I was good. When I was making copy of the backup, that one failed too. So I had to pay a lot of money to get the data off of here because it was my personal business stuff. So it was really, really important. Relatively inexpensive, these portable ones. I've stopped using these just because they're a little slower and not quite big enough capacity anymore. They max out at about 5 terabytes, which is a lot of data, but since I've started doing video, I need more than that. So I've gone to desktop drives. I have 4 of them sitting under my desk. So I have everything exists in its original. It has 2 copies. And my desktop is also backed up to a cloud storage service. So backup, that's the other thing you need. You need a copy and a copy of the copy. There you go. You've been told. That doesn't depend. You need that. You need that. All right. What's a good default setting when you are just going out and randomly taking photos? So assuming you have a camera, something like this, here is it's not quite a magic button, but it's kind of cool. There's a lot, these are computers. There's a lot going on here. So The one suggestion I for sure would have when you're going out taking photos and want to concentrate on the composition and not all the buttons, knobs, and dials and setting is do this. So when these come to you, let me see if I can get this to focus. It's probably going to be on the, come on, go to there. You're going to focus? There we go. You're going to be on the A. Stay in focus. Here, I'll hide my eyes. It's looking for my eyes. It's going to be on the green A. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to switch it from the A, one click over usually, to the P. The P stands for professional. No, it doesn't. It stands for photographer. No, it doesn't. It stands for program. And it's an automatic mode where the camera is going to determine the exposure, aperture, ISO, shutter speed settings, and give you a safe value there for brightness. And then you can concentrate on what you're looking at through the viewfinder and what the lens sees and work on that hard part and get a predictably good exposure, 90 times out of 100, okay? The P mode is awesome. It gives you an override possibility with exposure compensation, which I'm a big fan of using, and I photographed that way for a long, long time. And there you go. So P mode is a good thing. All right, so next question. Do you think you lose anything moving from a DSLR to a mirrorless camera? So let's review quickly what's a DSLR. This is a DSLR. A DSLR has a mirror inside that takes the light from the lens up to the viewfinder, and then that will flip out of the way when you click the shutter. So let's turn this back off. Let me show you really quickly. There is a mirror inside of this housing. There we go, kind of. All right, so there's the mirror inside there. It flips up out of the way when you create the photo. That's mirror. This camera, my Fuji, is mirrorless. So there's no, so it's quieter. There's less mechanical stuff going on in here. Look at the Fuji, wants to focus on the Fuji. Kind of, not? There we go. So there's less mechanical stuff going on here. Okay, so do you lose anything moving from a DSLR to a mirrorless? It used to be you lost quite a number of things. The main one was focusing speed. These have caught up now, especially compared to an entry-level camera like this. Here's what you gain with mirrorless. The main thing I love that I gain is when I'm looking through the viewfinder and I change my exposure, that change is seen on the screen or the viewfinder. So I don't get surprised by exposure. When I'm looking through the viewfinder on here, no matter what I change my exposure settings to, it always is the same brightness in here because of how these are designed. The other thing I gain with a mirrorless camera is tends to be better focusing for video. It's more designed and optimized for video than this type of camera is. So if video is in your future or part of your life, a mirrorless camera tends to work a little better for that. What else? Those are kind of the major things. I never thought I would switch to mirrorless. I remember when some articles first came out and I was a DSLR user, I thought, no way, I'm changing. And then I did, and I love it. I can't imagine going back. All right, what do we got next on the gear question? When is a good time to switch from your phone to a real camera? This one also somewhat depends. It depends on why, maybe? No, why does it depend? I think here's the answer. Okay. When do you switch from your phone to a camera? If you're no longer enjoying the photos you create with your phone, you're bumping up against limits of, I can't have the lens I want. I need it to perform better in low light. I need to be able to choose my shutter speed, my aperture. If those kind of things are in your way creatively, then that's the time to switch. Or when you just even look at the photos off of there, you're just not happy with it. That would be a time to consider a camera. Go to a camera store, try some out, rent one maybe. You can rent a camera for a week for probably about 10% of the cost of buying one. So give that a whirl, see what you think. Yeah, if you're just not happy, that's the time to switch. That's the time to switch. And when you won the lottery, what are your preferred SD cards to use? Maybe a budget option as well. my SD cards, which are the memory cards we store most photo data on these days. Are you going to focus? Let me get my face out of the way. All right, so the SD card I use, I had to trick my camera into focusing on this. I don't know how well you can see this. I use cards by a company called SanDisk. SD cards are the standard format in most digital cameras. There are a couple other, well, there's one other, what's it called, CF Express, and some of the higher end Sonys and Nikons and Canons. But SD is the most common. I use SanDisk because I've had zero problems with them in the 17 years I've been using them. They're not terribly expensive. There's different speed ratings. I get the mid-speed one. Let's see what we've got for pricing right now. All right, so I'm just going to B&H Photo, a big website in New York that sells photo gear. So the speed of card I use is this 95 megabytes per second, the Extreme Pro. Ooh, it sounds good, doesn't it? So 32 gigabyte version is $15. You can put a lot of photos in 32 gigabytes. It's about 50 cents per gigabyte is how it works. This is faster, so it's 300 megabits per second. It's $54, so it's about $1.50. 128 gigabytes at 170 is 33. So the prices are all over the place. This one's, wow, this is on sale. I should probably buy some of those. Ooh. Anyway, sorry. That's a great price. 128 gigs is good for video and a whole lot of photos. So I wouldn't go budget on this. Don't get the $5. If the going rate is $30, don't buy the $5 or the $10 one. Find a middle of the road price. That's kind of good because these are your babies. If this craps out on you, it has a technical glitch, breaks, loses data just because it decided I'm done. Your photos are gone unless you've already got a copy on your computer. So yeah, this is not permanent storage for your photos. Remember that too. So as soon as you take the photos, get them back on your computer when you get back home. Don't wait a month to download these because they might disappear. These are not super heavy duty. So yeah, they're not fragile, but you don't want to mess around with them. All right, so that's memory card stuff. A couple questions about lenses. And gear in general, and does it even really matter? So this first photo is about, a question is about astrophotography. Can you use a kit lens? What's a kit lens? A kit lens is a lens that when you buy your camera, it's the lens that came with a camera. Oftentimes, most of the time, it is an 18 millimeters to 55 millimeter zoom lens. If you buy this lens separately, it's about $150 to $200. Which as far as lenses go is not much money. It's an affordable option. And this quarter especially, I've seen some amazing photos from students who have this lens. Really quite impressive. Yeah, they've made it sing and dance. They figured out its limits and then worked around that. As far as astrophotography, so night photos of the stars, of the Milky Way, of whatever's out there, it's hard to do with this lens. Astrophotography is one of the most technically demanding types of photography because you don't have a lot of light. You're going to need some kind of tripod. You're going to have to do some math on exposure. Literally, you got to figure it out yourself. Your camera, if you just set it on the P mode that I suggested earlier and go click, it's not going to do what you want. And then this lens doesn't let in a lot of light. And it's neither telephoto nor wide angle, so it's not, it's kind of in the middle, not super wide anyway. So you can try it. The photos are free, so you can give it a try and see if it does what you want. I would suggest do a quick Google search for suggestions on how to do astrophotography, what the kind of gear you need, and watch some YouTube videos and get some tips and tricks that way. It's very specialized, a whole lot of fun. So yeah, but it is a little bit of gear specific sometimes. Next question is somewhat, I guess, addressed to me. If I could only keep one lens, which lens would I keep? And it's this one. It's the lens that's currently on my camera, the 18 to 135 zoom lens. So it was a kit lens. I mean, this is the lens. Did it? Well, yeah, I bought it with at the same time I bought the camera. I don't remember if it was in the same box. But it starts at the same place, 18 millimeters, but it goes more telephoto. This goes to 135 instead of 55. So it's more my style of photography that I mentioned, where I like details, close-ups, small picture stuff. So I take a ton of pictures with this. It's a great, if I had to get rid of all my other lenses and stuff back there, this would be the one I would keep. I'd be a little sad about, well, I'd be a lot sad about it, but this one does day to day when I'm carrying it around. This is the lens I take with me all the time. Does gear really matter? Next question. One could argue that it does, so why do photographers keep saying it doesn't? Yeah, you'll see that a lot. Gear doesn't matter. It does and it doesn't. It's not that it depends, but sometimes it depends. Like, for example, astrophotography is a very good example. The gear matters there because you need camera that will do well in low light. You can turn the ISO up to a higher value, maybe 6,000 ISO. If I try to turn this $500 camera up to ISO 6,000, there would be so much noise in the photo you couldn't see the stars. So you need a camera that will do that. You need lenses that will let a lot of light in because it's dark at night and the only light is from the stars, so you have to get longer exposures. You need a good sturdy tripod so that the camera doesn't move. So there's a lot of stuff there's certain situations like that you do. Now, if you're taking sunrise and sunset pictures where the composition, the subject is doing a lot of the work, this will work great. So it's just a matter of somewhat showing up, being prepared, taking the camera out, not making any technical errors. So in that case, the gear doesn't matter. But sometimes it does. Sports photography, for sure. You're not going to go do sports photography with a phone. You're not going to do it with this camera. You're not going to do it with this camera. So sometimes it matters, but a lot of times it doesn't. It shouldn't be an excuse, especially if you're trying to create more artistic, somewhat maybe abstract photos. In that case, really, the gear doesn't matter. It's more leaning into your vision of what you want the photos to be and say and do. Yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay. My opinion on using UV filters, polarizing filters, ND filters, etc. Hold on again. Okay, I'm back. All right, three kinds of filters here. First one, UV, ultraviolet. Oftentimes those are just clear pieces of glass that have some coating on them, put on the front of the lens to provide UV protection. I don't think you need that. Because here's why. Unless you're going to spend $100+ on one, what you're then doing is putting a $15 piece of glass in front of your $200 or $2,000 or somewhere in between lens you paid a ton of money for, and your image is going to be affected by $20 worth of glass. So the other thing that happens with that, sometimes when the light will bounce around more in there, you're going to get more lens flares, which sometimes is cool. Also might affect your focusing performance. It might slow it down or make your camera hunt a little more because it's got an extra layer of stuff between the glass and the lens and the image. So I don't use them. I used to, somewhat to justify it. You protect the front element of the lens, but yeah, I don't use them. Polarizing filters, those are like this. They're called circular polarizers. Let's see if I don't know if you can really see this very much. What they do is these reduce reflections. So if you're taking a picture of a lake with clear water and you don't want to see the reflections, you want to see into the lake, you would use one of these, and you dial so that it changes the light polarization. I don't quite there's physics and math and stuff, so I just know they work. It can make your sky a little bluer if you like that. It reduces reflections. That's basically what it does. So a lot of landscape photographers will use these to make the sky a little more blue, reduce sometimes reflections on foliage even, and stuff like that. So these are good. If you've got expensive lenses, don't put a cheap anything in front of it. So good ones of these are like 70 to multiple hundreds of dollars. So don't get the $20 one. Next up, we have things called ND filters. ND filters are neutral density filters, and what they do is they're block light. So this is basically, you can see my reflections of my my notes, my keynote. But this is like sunglasses for your lens. So it blocks the light. Not blocks it, it reduces it quite a bit. I can see through this right now, but it's very, very dark. So what this is for is getting longer shutter speeds when you have a lot of light, or when you want to use a wide open aperture and have shallow depth of field. This will let you do that. So that's how you get, we've seen photos maybe during the day when there's a waterfall picture, and in the waterfall is just, you know, cotton candy kind of look. This will let you get that longer shutter speed even though it's bright. So you're basically putting sunglasses on the sun to block out a lot of the light. Actually, you're putting it on your lens. Again, for these, I would suggest not buying the cheap ones. Somewhere 80 to mid hundreds for some of these. Lots of variety in these. You can spend thousands on these for some systems, but I have not. So, because I don't use them that much, but they're helpful. Yeah, I do use these. I use these when I do time-lapse photography, which I need to do some more of. Yeah, they're helpful. I say no to the UV, yes on polarizing in certain situations, especially landscape, and ND has also lots of uses. Aside from memory card, camera, and tripod, what else would you suggest in a beginner's kit? Interested in macro photography, should I invest in a DSLR with a macro lens, or a point and shoot work for my needs? All right, they're kind of, okay, so especially on the first one, it depends. Aside from a camera, blah, 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 and tripod, something to carry your camera is a good idea. Good camera bag. I have a camera bag problem. In addition to a tripod problem, I have like 4 or 5 camera bags. You never know what I'm gonna need: the big bag, the little bag, the medium bag. But for sure, I highly recommend this little device. I'll point to the video I have made about this, extension tubes. A great investment. Anywhere from $50 to $150. What these do is turn any lens you connect it to on your camera into a close focus, almost macro lens. I love that kind of photography. It's an easy way to create interesting photos because you're looking at textures, shapes, you're up close where your eye normally is, so you've created an interesting perspective, which helps almost anything look more interesting. So that gets to the next one about DSLR is, or a point and shoot. I would always lean to a DSLR or mirrorless camera rather than a point and shoot because of image quality. When you're doing detail shots, which is what macro is all about, you want detail, you want great image quality. And one of the factors that goes into that there's a couple of them, but one is the quality of the lens. Another is the size of the image sensor in the camera. A point and shoot, those little compact cameras you see at Target and they come in different colors, those have small sensors, yucky lenses, and just won't generally render a high quality image that these other kind of cameras will. You don't have to invest in a macro lens. Like I said, my solution is this for $50. Well, I think this set was $75 or so, give or take a little bit. Attach it to this lens, my favorite lens that I've already answered, and boom, macro land, or really close up detail. Go watch my video about that, like I said, and see what I think about that. All right. Last gear question here. How much equipment do I need, and will I want to carry a lot of gear with me hiking or traveling? My guess is no, you will not want a lot of gear when hiking or traveling. It's just extra weight, and if you'll probably hesitate. So especially hiking or any conditions where you're taking photos where maybe you've got dust, or the environment is potentially bothersome, like rain or whatnot, you're not going to want to change lenses. So get a good lens that will do most of what you want to do. Like that's what this is. When I went to London, when I traveled, this is the lens I use. I have this lens and one other, a wide angle lens that are the two lenses I use 95% of the time. And then I usually have a smaller prime lens if I need something just for just a different flavor. So yeah, I would say a minimal kit is good. Find a good one single lens so you don't have to change if it's raining, if it's dusty, if it's snowy. Find a lens that'll do it all, and that'll keep your life simpler when you're packing for hiking, camping, and those kind of situations where you want to concentrate on the journey as much as the destination. There you go. All right, portraits. Our next topic. Let's talk about portraits. If I want to get better at portrait photography, some things that a beginner should know to take more interesting portraits. Here's some suggestions. Portrait photography is a partnership. It's you, the photographer, and the person or persons you're creating photos of. So that's a big element. That chemistry is a big element. It's, I think, more important than the gear. As much as I love gear, work on your people skills, work on how you present yourself, how you project what you're doing, have a sense of confidence, be authentically you. If you're a quiet person, you don't need to be telling dad jokes like I do. You can be you, and that's authentic. The people will connect with that. The number one thing I will say to help you do that, to make that connection, is when you're taking photos, especially if you're doing it with a camera instead of a phone, making portraits. Here's the most scary thing in the world if you're having your photo taken. Are you ready? Here we go. Here's the most scary thing. Right? You need to be talking. So through this whole time, oh, that looks great. Do that. Turn your head a little bit this way. Oh man, I love this. It's great. That's awesome. Yeah, so communication while you're creating the photos, while you're clicking. Don't just be silent behind the camera because the person on the other end, on the other side of the lens will be thinking, oh, they don't like what's going on. They don't like me. This sucks. Yeah, so be you, practice being you with a camera in your hand and talking to the person. Start with family and friends, your pets, whatever. Well, less so your pets, they may not respond to tilt your head that way. But there you go. That's a start. Lots of practice. Find out your style, the way you communicate, and that again takes practice. Yeah, so give that a try. Give that a try. Practice, be yourself, be you, create a partnership. If you're excited about what you're creating on the back, let that show when you see the photo, like, oh yeah, this is working. This is fun. Let's do this. So there we go. Let's talk about some poses, standard way for taking photos. How do I make people feel comfortable? So I kind of covered that last one a little bit. What poses should I learn? Again, when I do portrait stuff, I don't do a lot of posing. Most people nowadays, especially if you're under like 30, most people are very comfortable in front of the camera, and they just kind of tend to position themselves anyway. I hate this kind of pose, the hand to the face. I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. Let people be themselves. Take photos in places they're comfortable already. Where maybe they can interact with something, they can sit, they can stand, they can lean. And when all else fails, go to Pinterest and look up portrait poses. Go to YouTube and find some portrait photographers who take photos you admire and watch their videos about how they go about doing that. And the next question kind of is a little follow-on to that. What is there a standard angle for taking photos? Here's my quick suggestion on that. Don't have people stand straight to the camera, shoulders straight to the camera, but have them pivot just a little bit. So get to an angle, and then you turn the head, and then here is kind of the magic. Are you ready? So get them to do forehead out and down. So if you do this, if they just stand kind of normal, you get, watch the Peter Hurley video called It's All About the Jaw. That's what I'm doing here. So forehead out and down. Not too much because you still got to get the chin. So forehead out. It feels weird when you're doing it. Forehead out and maybe down just a little bit. So you're trying to create this jawline here. Okay? So if I'm just standing, if I'm doing this, I'm as wide as I'm going to be, which is wider than I'd like. But anyway, so forehead out and down just a little bit. All right? That's a good little headshot tip. Again, I'm far from a master at this stuff. I would suggest doing some YouTube and or Pinterest learning on these things. Do some research. Find some photographers who are creating images you love, and learn from them. Learn from them. All right. How do you make people feel comfortable in front of the camera? Talk to them. Be yourself. Be authentic. They probably hired you because they like you, so be you. Project confidence. Project interest in them. Have a conversation while you're creating the photos. It doesn't have to be just, okay, smile, click. In fact, I highly recommend don't say the word smile, because then people do this and that's scary. So tell them a silly dad joke that I told in the video. I don't know. Be you. Be you. And people don't even have to smile in portraits. You know, it's okay not to smile. Again, portraits should be, I hope, a snapshot of that person. By snapshot, I mean just a quick glimpse of what a sketch of this person at this point in time. And maybe that day isn't a happy day. Maybe it's the best day of their life and you want to capture that. Maybe it's the worst day and you want to support them and be alongside of them. So that's how you can do it. All right, good strategy for taking photos of people in public. So there's two ways I could interpret this question. One is kind of a street photography. I'm taking pictures of people I don't know, just kind of as a documentary, artsy-fartsy thing. Or I'm taking pictures of people I do know, but we're in public. So let's do that last one first. Again, if you're doing portraits of people in a crowd, and you're in a situation where other people are noticing you, just try to ignore it as much as you can. Again, create that kind of a tunnel between you and the subjects and just be present in that. Don't worry about the noise out here. Just be present as much as you can. And that's going to take practice. Try not to be self-conscious. Know people are going to notice you, but just do your thing, have fun, and concentrate on the person you're creating photos with. If you're doing street photos, which are, photos of people who may not even know you're creating photos of them, there's lots of ways to go with that. Again, I would maybe do some YouTube searching on that or Google. But the way I approach it is when I feel comfortable to do it, I do enjoy it because it's fascinating to watch people being people. In America, in the US, I'm not an attorney, but my understanding of the law is if someone's in public, they're visible from public at least, they don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy, so you are allowed to create photos of them without their permission. Now, just because you're allowed to doesn't mean it's a good idea. As an older male, I shouldn't be taking photos of other people's kids. That's just wrong on lots of levels, or could be misinterpreted, even if it's not wrong. So if you're not comfortable doing it, don't do it. If the situation feels uncomfortable, don't do it. If you get a mean look from somebody, don't do it. I guess it depends, but if you enjoy it and want to practice it, go for it. Use a lot of common sense, be safe, respect other people. That's the number one thing. In the name of creating my art, someone else shouldn't feel uncomfortable while I'm doing that because they're in the photo. Does that make sense? Okay. Alrighty. What's the best way to plan or prepare for a photo shoot? Any gear or skills needed to have a successful one? For a photo shoot, again, I don't think the gear really matters. A little bit it depends, but much less so. As long as you've got some good light, sunrise, sunset are good times for portraits. For flattering, the generally most flattering light on most people, both color and softness wise. What else? So weather forecast is good. Have some good locations where you're comfortable, where the subjects will be comfortable, maybe where there aren't a lot of other people. So that kind of thing. Any specific gear, again, not necessarily. If you want to learn artificial light, then yeah, that's a good thing to learn, a good skill. But one more layer of complexity. So last question here in the portrait section is, what makes the best background for portraits? Definitely, it depends. Is this a portrait background? Well, it could be a YouTube bio picture. Yeah. If it's for my teaching profile, maybe not. I don't know. I don't have like a collection of backgrounds. You can buy backgrounds that look like, painted walls or wood or lots of different things. I don't use those. You can buy just white paper or colored paper, black paper, gray paper. I do use those sometimes for just the headshot kind of thing. But it depends. What's your style? What do you like to do? Do you want to show it like a studio? Do you want it to show like it's an environmental portrait, which means they're interacting with something besides a white piece of paper behind them? It literally depends. Everybody has different comfort, different preferences, and it's a conversation you should have with the person you're creating the photos with, and decide what you want to do together. And maybe you do some on white paper and some on black paper, and then you go outside and take some at sunset. So a little bit of everything. It depends. All right, moving on. The miscellaneous category. What can I do to make interesting and unique photos of my pups? It's really difficult to get them to hold still if they aren't laying down. And I have a lot of pictures of my son's dog sleeping. Okay, here's a suggestion. Then if you can't get photos of them when they're laying, if they're not still, except when they're laying down and napping, then create photos when they're just active. Let them be a blur maybe, or go outside, go to a park or somewhere, let them run around and play and get down low in their viewpoint and create photos of them running towards you, running away from you, running by you. So you're going to have to play around with shutter speed on your camera. If you're using a camera, put your camera in shutter priority mode, and then pick a shutter speed that will either freeze the motion if that's what you want, or make it a blur, practice with that. Let the dogs be active and let the photo show that action, either through a little bit of blur, a lot of blur, or frozen motion of a head whipping around with a ball in the mouth or something, or eating, or playing together. So, let them be active and then create some photos around that. I find it more interesting. Again, I would try and get into the dog's eye view of the world, so probably getting lower. I know this person, so I know they have little dogs, so it means getting way low. Because if you're up above, you're just observing the action, and then you're going to include, especially if you're inside, you're going to have carpet, you're going to have whatever. If you're down low, you can look across them and tend to get better, shallower depth of field where the background isn't as distracting. Hope that helps. How to reduce unintentional moving while taking photos with the camera and phone as well. So if you've got a camera, here's tip number one. A lot of lenses, or now camera bodies too, have in some image stabilization. So they'll kind of work to offset any kind of camera motion with some gyroscopes in the lens and or the camera body. So turn that on. That's thing number one. Thing number two to do, this is both with phones and cameras, is how you hold the camera. So if you have a camera like this or the Canon, think of the letter U. The letter U. Okay, not this. So not the letter C, but the letter U. So you're going to put your hand as a cradle under the lens. If you do this, you're not as stable. Let me back up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So focus. So this, I'm wiggly like this. I'm wiggly. But like this, my hand underneath, now I'm a tripod. My elbows are tucked in, and this will help me hold more steady. Okay. So for a phone, kind of similar, is as you're holding the phone, use two hands. That's a big thing. And instead of using the on-screen button to create the photo, so let's turn that camera on. So instead of using the on-screen button, so you're tapping and moving the screen, use the volume sliders, the volume buttons, excuse me. So it's especially easy to do it like this when you're holding the camera horizontally. So now I'm just pushing here and it will create a photo, rather than trying to get it with my thumb and I'm moving the screen. Again, try and lock your elbows in like this. I know it looks goofy. It looks goofy, but if you want a sharper photo, that's how you do it. You got to hold the camera still. Okay? Okay. Just nod and say yes. Just nod and say yes. I have this habit. I get this one. Compare myself to other people's work. How to stop that. How to stop getting discouraged. That's a hard one. It does depend, but it's hard. Attitude is so important. Attitude and motivation. So the first part about comparison, let's start there. There's an old saying, comparison is the thief of joy. So by looking at what other people are doing, either the income they're making, the art they're creating, the clothes they wear, the cars they drive, that's going to steal stuff from you. It's going to take away your joy. So try not to look at what someone else has as something you don't have, but something potentially you can aspire to learn from. It's an attitude thing. It's an adjustment. I'm not always good at it, but that's part of it. Another thing is confidence, or an attitude of, I'm not there yet, but I can get there. I can create the kind of thing I want to create. I just haven't done it yet. But there's next time, there's tomorrow, there's one, I'm closer than I was. So there's that attitude of the journey, the progress. I'm not where I'm at want to be with my photos yet, but I'm closer than I was a year ago or 5 years ago. I'm always making progress. And a part of that progress is practice, getting out and creating photos, learning new things, watching, what other people are doing, learning from them from an inspirational standpoint rather than a comparison standpoint. About discouragement, that's going to happen. You're going to have times where you feel like you're just not making anything you're excited about. And you just, not just, the way through it is through. There's no way around it. You just got to go through it. And it's hard. And it sucks. Find friends who are encouraging to you. If you're students in my class can always reach out to me and later on down the road and say, I'm struggling here, help me out. Find people who want to support you and will be those voices of encouragement in those hard times. Find people you can trust, travel companions on this journey of creating art. It doesn't have to necessarily be another photographer, but someone else who's also creating something, maybe a musician friend, and how you can learn from each other. An artist, a fine artist, maybe a sculptor, a singer. Yeah, lots of different things. A chef, because then they can feed you. Yeah, so hang in there, keep going, because the one side, upside, if you will, to the downside of discouragement is then you really appreciate even more when you're feeling positive about where you're going and what you're creating. Without the downside, you don't appreciate the upside as much. Does that make sense? We need the yin and yang of that, of you can't know true joy unless you've been really sad, because you have nothing as much to compare it to. You don't have a bigger thing. Yeah, sorry, I got all philosophical there for you. All right. What is a good tip that photographers want to copy photos of famous photographers but don't have the same equipment? Depending on which famous photographer you're talking about, if you're talking about photographers up until the past 10 years, photos that were made 10 years or longer ago, You have better gear than them. Your phone is probably technically better than what they had. So it's not the equipment necessarily. It's a matter of vision, of learning how to use this piece of technology or this piece of technology to create what you have in mind here. How to use the technical to get you to the creative you want to do. So practice, understand, you have to deconstruct what they've done. What is it you like about what they've done? Is it the composition? Is it the subject? Is it the light they've used? Is it post-processing? And kind of deconstruct that. So you have to understand it well enough before you can recreate it. And then the gear will matter less. Now, if you're trying to capture, recreate a photo of a great sports moment, maybe a football catch, in the end zone of, then you need special gear for that and access and lots of practice. But if it's a beautiful nature photo of a sunset of a certain place, it's finding out when they took it, what season, what time of day, where they were located, and then go to that same spot maybe 10 or 20 times until you get the photo that you want. Okay. Social media and all that, what advice and tips and content layout, blah, blah, blah. I'm terrible at this. I know what I'm supposed to do and I do most of it, but I don't have a ton of followers. In fact, my Instagram account has grown very, very little in the past 2 years, year and a half. It's kind of stuck in the mid 1200s as far as followers, which I'm okay with. So I'm not the good one to answer this. You can do lots of research on this. I would say though, just like creating any art, you have to be aware of your motivation. If your motivation is to get a ton of followers, then you create art that will do that. And there's certain types of art that's almost guaranteed to do that. And if you want to create art that's more true to you, it makes you happy, there's a chance that kind of art will not be as popular with the rest of the world, so you won't get as many followers. You have a smaller audience, but maybe they're more dedicated because there are, again, fewer of them. So find your motivation. I don't have the best strategies. I know some of them. It's consistent posting. It's hashtagging. It's being active and commenting on other posts, other people in similar genres. It's being, you have to be social in the social media side of things too, rather than just waiting for people to come to you. Yeah, it's complicated and the algorithm's always changing. So good luck. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, follow me and I'll more than likely follow you back unless you have your account set to private. Then I assume it's private for a reason, and I probably won't follow you back. But yeah, I'll follow you back if you follow me. Rock on. I'll put the Instagram handle down here, at msladicphoto. Next question. What do you find most difficult about photography? Right now, it's getting out and creating photos. I haven't, to be honest, created photos in a month. Combination of the weather, mood, the other work. I haven't been creating photos, and I'm starting to feel like I need to go do that because I need to make something besides. I enjoy the videos, but I enjoy the photos more. So okay. So for me right now, it's getting out and actually creating photos. I've got too many excuses right now, and it's starting to bug myself. You ever had that where you bug yourself? Stop it. Just go do it. I like this question. This was kind of fun. My wife is a photographer as well, and we have matching cameras because we're that cool couple. No. Do you ever bicker over who has the better photo? No. There's, I think, sometimes a little competition, like, oh, I wish I got that. And it's more from an admiration standpoint. By that, I mean, oh, I didn't see that. And I'm glad you looked at it differently than I did, and it's awesome. Debbie tends to take photos differently than I do. She tends to be a little wider, a little different perspective than I do, and that's great. We all need to be true to who we are as artists and create what we create. And there's always something to learn from someone else. Even if you've already known them more than half your life, there's still new things to learn from each other. So there you go. No, we don't bicker over who has a better shot because I do, but she says she does, but there you go. Besides practice, what's your best advice for improving on tracking subjects that can be a car, person, or animal while maintaining clear and sharp focus in the photos? So a moving subject, I'm assuming. Here's what you need to do. It's going to be hard with a phone. It's possible, but there's a little bit of some settings magic to do. You want to have your focus mode in continuous autofocus. You want to have your focus set up in your menus to be tracking, so it'll track the subject as it maybe is not in the middle of the frame, but it'll follow it to the sides. You want a shutter speed that's going to work. You want to be in a burst drive mode, so your camera, you just hold the button down, it's going to take a whole bunch of photos. And then you're going to want a shutter speed that's going to do to motion what you want. Maybe you want no blur, little blur, lots of blur. So yeah, some settings, and then the practice part. So practice following the motion. If the hardest part of type of tracking to do of object motion is object moving towards you, with the distance change, especially if it's moving very quickly, as you've even just noticed as I move, my Fuji is, especially in video, sometimes doesn't follow the motion very well. What was I going to say? So yeah, be aware of what the limits of your camera are. Practice so okay, well, I'm not going to take a picture of this car coming at me at 60 miles an hour because I'm going to lose focus after the third shot. But going side to side, oh yeah, I'll follow that all day long. Okay? Hope that helps. All right, let's move on to our last category in this long video. Our last category is business. So let's get to a first set of questions. How good do you have to be in order to start a photography business? What's the most important thing while starting a photo business? How do you come to a price point? Too much or too little? And advertising and getting the words out. Okay, so let's start with the first question. How good do you have to be? Good enough that someone will pay you. If you're going to be a professional, that's about it. That's the definition, I should say. How good do you have to be? I think maybe the answer, besides it depends, is knowing that there's never going to be the perfect time to do it. Okay, you're never going to feel good enough. Kind of like having a kid or getting married. There's never a right time to do that. There's never the best time. There's just, now this is the next thing, kind of the next logical progression in a relationship. It's the next thing you do as a photographer if you want to. Some people don't want to make money with their photos. They want to have it as a hobby, as purely art for them. There's not an income complication. There's not a marketing complication. There's not consideration of social media and all that stuff and websites and all that stuff. It takes away from the art, frankly. So that's something to consider is, do you want to do that? Do you, like if you worked at an ice cream place and then you ate all the ice cream or you couldn't stand the smell of ice cream anymore because you worked with it all day. It took away the joy of ice cream, which would be so sad. I've heard there's people who don't like ice cream. I don't understand. All right, anyway. So one of the most important things about starting a business is understanding how it's different than taking photos strictly for yourself. Especially if you're doing portraits or things like that, where you're creating art that involves work directly with someone else. If you're creating art that you're just going to sell and but work to have other people buy it without their input before they bought it, that's a little different thing. But most of us will do art that or photography that there's a client involvement in the creation of the photo. So understand that. You will spend 80+% of your time on the admin, on the emailing, on the marketing, on the everything but clicking of photos. So there's a big under the iceberg component of that below the waterline. How good do you have to be? I don't know. Frankly, there's a photographer I'm aware of semi-locally that I'm amazed people pay this person, frankly, but quite successful. So, but not my cup of tea. So, Beauty is in the eye of the beholder and in the writer of the check. So just be aware of that. It's different. It's different, and the answer will be different for you. If find a mentor that can help you on the business side of things. I suggest if you're thinking about any kind of entrepreneurial business, take some business classes while you're at Highline. Do some, watch some videos on that, read some books, get educated about the business side of art because it's different than the art side of art. Advertising and all that. What's the best way to display examples where people will be interested in it? And pricing. I try to price myself kind of in the middle. Photography, as far as creating photos, is not my main income. Teaching is. So I can be a little like it's a side gig, so I don't have to make as much. It supports, I guess. So my case is, it depends. Run an analysis on what you need to live, if this is your only source of income, and gather all your expenses, figure out how much you're going to work, all that, and then do some math on what do you need to charge per hour, per session, per whatever, knowing that in a 40-hour week, you will be lucky if you have 10 billable hours in that. So that's now your actual working time. It's complicated. Again, there's some folks on YouTube who discuss this, how to set your prices. It does depend. It depends on where you live. Like in Seattle area, it's going to be more expensive than if you lived in, Laurel, Mississippi, kind of thing. So there you go. How to get started, get gigs. Word of mouth is your best and least expensive and most authentic way to grow a business is have people talk about you. People who know you say, you've got to get this person to create your photos for you, with you. So that's a big part of it, is getting people excited. Timing is important. There's a luck factor in the success of any business that, if you try to start a wedding photography business in March of 2020, that was terrible timing. Because wedding business shut down, venues shut down, so bad timing. But maybe in March of 2022 will be a great time because I'll have all these weddings that have been postponed, and now is a great time for it. Or maybe it's location based. Yeah, there's lots of factors that will go into this success besides your skill as a photographer, your skill as a business person, your marketing. There's lots of things you can't control. So just be aware of that. You have to be patient and persistent and willing to ride out at least a couple years before you have enough recurring business. It takes time. It takes time. It's the biggest thing. If you can, do this as a part-time in addition to maybe working a regular real job. Like say you work at Starbucks 30 hours a week and you've got health insurance and you've got those kind of expensive things and a basic income. Start your photography business then rather than potentially jumping in with both feet with no other support. Because cash flow is the hardest thing in starting a new business. By that I mean, when the money comes into you may be different than when you send the bills to the client. In 1 month, you may get a ton of money, more money than you've ever seen in a month, but you may not get any more money for 3 or 4 months. And so you have to plan and it's hard. It's hard, but can be awesome. Can be awesome. Some couple questions. This first one's kind of a little towards me. How did your photography business kickstart? How did you start it? And the question about, as a working photographer now, should you consider video as something to offer? So the first question for me, I started offering photography service I had a decent camera and I was doing graphic design and I would offer it as a kind of an add-on, or like, you don't need to go buy a stock photo. I can create that photo for you. I can create photos of your building. I did some work with the Seattle Public Library and for a while. And when they had their new building open up at the downtown branch, I went and took some photos there and we used that in materials. So then, it was just an add-on to service I was offering. And then it evolved when I started teaching it to kind of be now my main business aside from the teaching. yeah, it was kind of an evolution. It wasn't necessarily planned for me, but it just it evolved from one business, from a side support of a business, to becoming the main business. Everybody's story will be slightly different on how that gets started for them. Is it important, I think, to offer video services these days? Yeah, it sure doesn't hurt. It's like anything, any job, the more skills you bring to the table, the more variety of things you can do, the more potential both services as well as attractiveness you have to somebody. Especially if they want to hire you on a full-time basis, but there's not that many photo jobs out there aside from freelance. For example, I mean, that's kind of what I did when I started offering photography as an add-on to my graphic design services. And now I offer graphic design kind of as an add-on to my photography services. And yeah, I do some video for clients, but mostly here for just us folks on YouTube. So yeah, there's no one way to get here. Everybody's story is going to be a little different. What's the best way for a photographer to advance their career, become known by people, and receive jobs? And how can you, or did you, stand out from other photographers? How can you keep your photos interesting after a while? So let's start with that first one. And here's a fun, well, at least I think it's a fun story. How do you become known by people and receive jobs? You go walk a dog. Okay, you go walk a dog. 3-4 years ago, I was out walking my son's dog, and at our condo where I live here, and walked by this lady who was painting a bus, a school bus, a medium-sized bus. She was painting flowers on her pink bus. So of course, a conversation started. What are you doing? And she got to tell us her story. Her name's Carrie Schmidt. She now lives in Duval, but got to hear her story. She's a fascinating person. And I said, somewhere along the way, she asked what I do. And I said, I'm a photographer. She said, oh, I need a photographer. And like a week later, I was taking pictures of her and the bus. And that started a whole relationship we've had. I've done a whole bunch of pictures of her and Rosie. That's the name of the bus. Now she has a car she's painted, Poppy Loco. That's the name of the car. And we've been in magazines, and because I was out walking the dog and told someone I'd take photos. I've been in the Starbucks and had my camera on a table. Someone asked me if I was a photographer, and then I ended up doing headshot photos for their business. So tell people what you do. Tell everybody who will listen, and carry your camera around. People ask if you're a photographer. Yeah, you are. So how can I work with you? And then find out. And if you're scared or never done what they want you to do and you feel like it'd be interesting, figure out how to do it. And you're always welcome to ask your old buddy Michael for some assistance on that. How can you, or did you, stand out from other photographers? Especially if you're a portrait or people or event photographer, your greatest asset is you, the person, who you are as a whole, both creative, professional, and human being. Okay, that's super important. That they're hiring you as much as your gear and experience and talent. So that's one of the major ways you'll stand out, is who you are as a human being. Do they enjoy working with you? Do you get the work done on time? Do you follow through on deadlines? Do you give them more than they ask for? Are they just absolutely happy every time? Do you communicate well? Are you fun to be around? Those kind of things. That's what people are hiring as much as this. So that's one way. Obviously, you have to be able to deliver with this. But in my experience, in noticing other successful photographers, it's really who they are and as human beings and what they then are able to create that creates opportunity for them. So practice being you. Practice being an interesting person. Practice. So always be learning. Always increase your knowledge of things unrelated to photography that just make you more well-rounded, have interesting experiences. He says as he's been spending the last 2 months mostly inside and hardly ever going outside. Yeah, so do what I say, not what I do. But yeah, that's how you, it's as easy as that and as hard as that. Yeah, so I hope that's a little helpful on the business side. Photography business isn't for everybody. There's lots of shapes to photography businesses. I'm working on, having multiple ways of doing photography business. So you got to get creative in how you're being creative. And yeah, it's always good to have someone to bounce ideas off of. So if you ever want to do that, please feel free to send me an email. All right, so those are the questions. That was a long video. I will be brief in my summary and saying thanks for playing along. If you want to add any comments about my answers, if you have some personal experiences or things I missed, please add them in the comments below. I would love to have that. If you have another question you want to ask, leave that as well in below. If you'd like this video, I'd appreciate that. I'm not quite sweating, but I almost am because I've been sitting in front of the lights in the closed door room. And always, I would also appreciate it if you would subscribe to this channel. Be a big help on my journey to 1,000 as the time of recording here. Yeah, help me get there. Why not? Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the content. Next week video, I'll probably return to a lens review. So stay tuned for that. And until I see you next time, have fun creating photos. Stay well. Stay safe. Hopefully a vaccine in your future soon. Until then, wear the mask. Wash your hands. And I think I already said to have fun creating photos. So until next time, bye for now.